Hello everyone. So GPT-5 just came out and I decided to compare the different models that they offer, the GPT-5, GPT-5 Thinking and GPT-5 Pro, and to see how it compares to the Claude models 4 and 4.1. And I discovered something really interesting that I want to share with you, that basically they all think in a slightly different way and the structure of their thinking is also very different. And the more professional or advanced model you use, the more diverse is going to be the response that it provides in OpenAI. But when you compare it to Claude, for example, you will see that Claude is quite biased on only one topic, and then it doesn't really go in depth on the other one. So I just wanted to demonstrate this to you and to also ask you what you think about it, if this was the experience you had as well when you tried running it. But let me demonstrate what I discovered. So basically here, I asked the question to ChatGPT-5 first. What's the origin of the universe? And then I visualize it using the Infranodus extension for the browser that you can also download and use yourself. And what it does is that it analyzes the response that ChatGPT provides and builds a knowledge graph from it. And you can actually look at the knowledge graph if you click on the concepts. So if you show all the concepts, it can be quite dense, but you can also decrease the number of concepts you see. So it shows you the sort of representation of how the model thinks under the hood and what is the knowledge graph that it creates while it's answering your question. And you will see that, for instance, in this case, in the most simplest case, the GPT-5 model, it just focused the response on the origin of the universe, the original query had, and then it kind of went into other topics, but it didn't really develop them so much. And you can see it on the graph here. And when you click on the topics, you also see this, that 30% of influence is in the cosmic origins, and then the rest, 16 and 14, is on the other ones. So it's really biased to the question itself, and then it provides a little bit of indication of where else the response could go. Whereas if you look at the thinking model, so that's the second one they offer, GPT-5 Thinking, if you do the same visualization, as you can see, the graph is a little bit more diverse because the main topic, unlike in the first case, we had 38% influence on the cosmic origins. Here we have 26%, and it's on quantum inflation, so it's much more specific to this whole topic and kind of going a little bit more in depth, and then it's exploring other topics in more depth. So that's interesting because it's almost like the thinking model goes further in the different ways of thinking about this question, right? And then if you click on the concepts, you can see that the graph is much more diverse also than here. Here it's kind of focused on the two main ideas, and then it goes a little bit outside, whereas here it's really exploring some more esoteric ways to answer this question. And then finally, the interesting thing is that when you use the Pro model that takes time to think, it took 3 minutes and 30 seconds to think, it's actually the most diverse response, because you see the cosmic genesis, it's not even anymore cosmic origins, it's cosmic genesis, it has 19% influence. Then the next one has 19% influence, 15% influence, and 12%. So the distribution of influence is much more diverse in this last case. That means that the model is covering multiple different points of views and goes into them in more detail than in the other iterations that it had. So for example, if you look at the graph itself, also it's pretty interesting because you see it's very diverse, and each cluster is kind of developed. You have a big one here, for instance, on the Big Bang, and you didn't have this in the other ones. They were a little bit sparse. So the model is thinking in a much more diverse way. When it's a Pro model, you see the way of thinking it has is much more diverse, and it's more distributed among different types of topics that you have on the subject. So this I find interesting, and it's actually a really good way of thinking that it has, because then it allows you to go into each topic in much more detail than this more superficial overview of just kind of like the main theory and then going a little bit into each of them, but not really exploring them in detail. And then one last thing I wanted to show you is that when you compare it to Claude's output, because everyone is talking about how GPT-5 compares to Claude 4 and Claude 4.1, you will see that Claude is actually really biased on the original question. So I asked it, what's the origin of the universe? And then it gives me this main topic again, like the cosmic origin is this and that, but basically you see it's very biased on the actual question. It doesn't really go into the specific topics that the answer could provide. So that tells me that maybe the quality of the response is not so good. It maybe gives a good overview, but it doesn't really go in depth here, even though the length of the answer is almost the same. And here, again, in the advanced mode, so this is 4.1, a little bit more advanced model. Again, it's really focused on this cosmic origin topic. It goes a little bit more into the different ones. You see they're kind of shown here as different clusters, but it doesn't develop them enough, and it doesn't develop the connections between them enough. You can actually see it on the graph. You see there's like disconnected clusters a little bit. And in the research version, in the pro version of OpenAI, you actually have those clusters developed to quite a good extent. So this to me is a good indication. It really shows that the model is really trying to think about the different perspectives on this topic. So yeah, I find it interesting. Let me know if you had the same experience using those models. Also, if you would like to try this extension, you can download it for free from the Chrome web store, Infranodus AI, and then you just basically run it on any content, on any model. You can even use it on web pages, and it builds a knowledge graph. If you don't know how to read the knowledge graph, you can use all these layers here. It can show you the main topics. If you click on the topic, you can see what the topic is about. You can zoom in, explore it in more detail, use this knob here to show less or more nodes. And then the feature I like is that it also shows you the gaps between the different topics, and you can bridge these gaps to generate new ideas. So that can be interesting for you if you would like to develop this discourse further and, for example, ask the model to develop the parts that it's not connecting yet. Here, I'm asking it to connect quantum cycles and origin theories, for instance. And then I select this gap, and then I click on question, AI advice, and then I simply can copy this question and paste it here as a prompt and ask the model to develop this idea further. So you can also use it to think together with the model and to find the gaps that the model haven't thought of connecting yet, and then proposing it how it could bridge them in an interesting way. So try it out on infranodus.com and let me know your experience with these models, which one works for you better, and what you think about this observation I had. Thank you.